So for our first shot at this, we're going to start with one of my fall favorites, and that's going to be a stuffed butternut squash. We've got kale, some pork breakfast sausage, feta cheese, dried cranberries, and quinoa. And first things first, we're going to get quinoa soaking. It's important to soak all our grains before we cook them. We do that for two reasons. One, it helps reduce the cook time, but two, it helps digestibility and makes the nutrients in the grains more bioavailable. So we want to minimum soak for a couple hours. Ideally, we'd be soaking for 12 to 24 hours. So let's get that going first. Now we're going to get our squash going. So we're going to cut it in half lengthwise. Cutting with the stem can be a little bit of a challenge, so sometimes it helps to cut the bottom half, and then we're just going to take and pull it apart and break it at the stem there. We're going to want to scoop all the seeds out. I personally like to save the seeds and roast them, but that is optional. We have the oven preheated to 325 degrees. And now all we're gonna do, put these on a baking sheet, drizzle a little bit of avocado or olive oil on them. If I'm eating them plain, I like to do a little bit of brown sugar and butter, but we're going to be adding a lot to this, so we don't need a whole lot of flavor. And then we're going to throw a little bit of pepper on top, and these are going to bake for about 90 minutes. Now we're going to do a little bit of prep work. This can be done at really any time, it doesn't matter. But we're going to take and get some of the stems off the kale here. And we can talk through, one of my favorite things about this recipe is it's pretty versatile, and you can do it with a lot of different things. One of my favorite ways to make it is actually with Thanksgiving leftovers, and you can take the quinoa and substitute it for stuffing. You can switch the sausage out for turkey. Cranberries can be exchanged for cranberry sauce. You know, there's really a lot of different ways you can do this, and it still tastes great. Our squash has been in the oven for about an hour, so now we're going to get going on the rest of it. Timing for this one isn't as essential because after we're done cooking everything, we're going to pull it out, mix it all together, and put it back in the oven to warm up. So if your stuff gets cold or you need to wait for different things to finish, that's not as big of a deal. So here we've got our quinoa. We started with half a cup dry. It's been soaked, drained, and then I put a cup of water back in. We're going to have this boil, and once it starts boiling, we're going to turn it down to simmer and let that cook out. Our cast iron pan for the sausage is heating up. We're going to throw a little bit of water on. Looks like it's ready. So we're going to take our sausage and put that in and get it cooking. Our quinoa is starting to boil, so we're going to turn it down to low. Just wait a minute, make sure it doesn't boil over. And we're going to put the lid on and let it cook. Once we have our sausage mostly cooked, we're going to take our kale and start adding that in, breaking up any of the larger pieces, just shredding it a little bit. So our squash is done, and we know that because we just took a fork or a spoon and started to dig into it, and the flesh was nice and soft and came out easy. So then we're gonna scoop all that out and put it with the rest of our ingredients in a bowl. When we're doing this, we're gonna make sure to be real careful and make sure we don't rip the skin of the squash, because this is essentially gonna be our dish. It's not the end of the world if we break it, but it's better if we don't. So then we're gonna take all our ingredients together, put them in a bowl, and just start to mix them up. Throw some cranberries in. And then we're going to take our ingredients and scoop them back in. Now, because we're starting with a whole squash and adding a lot of ingredients to it and putting it back, we're probably going to have some extra, and that can just go off to the side and be added into a different dish or eaten on its own later. Once we have our squash stuffed to our liking, we're going to take a little bit of the feta and just break it up, sprinkle it on top. Now, this doesn't have to be feta, but it just happens to be one of my favorite cheeses, so that's what I like putting on top. And then we're going to take this and throw it back in the oven for, say, 10 or 15 minutes and see what it looks like. We just want to get everything warmed up and get the cheese melted a little bit, and then we're going to call it good. And there we have it. It's a fairly simple meal. Admittedly, it takes a little bit longer cook time, a little bit more preparation, but you have a healthy meal full of protein, vitamins A, K, C, manganese, magnesium, and it tastes great.